With spring football rolling in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and the buzz we have coming over from Bama Online, I think it's worth unpacking that wide receiver room out there for the Crimson Tide, I think, is being slept on just a little bit when it comes to the national conversation across college football. We'll talk about all that right now, tell you why I feel that way, and tell you why I think this room actually has a chance to be really freaking good in 2025. But before we get to that, make sure you are subscribed right here. Alabama fans have had a lot of y'all get dialed in over the course of the last few weeks, so we appreciate y'all for that. A lot more spring intel coming your way, a lot more conversations around your football team in the future, so just be dialed in. We appreciate you being dialed in. Best way to be dialed in, as always, is to be subscribed. So here's the thing. Last year for Alabama, it was very, very obvious to anyone with a set of eyeballs that you did not have what you needed at quarterback to operate the trademark Kalen DeBoer offense. Now, that's not me telling you I'm not still a Jalen Milroe stan. I thought it would work a lot better than it did. But with that being said, the offense that Kalen DeBoer wants to run is typically a little bit more of a vertical shots kind of system. They want to throw the ball, we've said it now ad nauseum, right around 40 times a game, historically speaking. I think it'll be less than that in 2025, but you catch my drift. Jalen Milroe and his skill set did not marry particularly well with the traditional Kalen DeBoer offensive system. So when your quarterback struggles, what happens? You can't really showcase what you have on the perimeter. And so I think in large part, we're looking across college football, talk about the top wide receiver rooms, and you talk about your Ohio States, deservedly so, talk about your Oregons, deservedly so. I think Alabama is very quietly one of the better wide receiver rooms in the SEC, and I think they have a chance to trend upward and be one of the better wide receiver rooms when it's all said and done in 2025, finish in that upper tier in college football. The reason why I feel that way, you look at the guys they have in that room, there's some legitimate top-end talent that I don't think was totally maximized last season. Ryan Williams, we saw him flash in a big way against Georgia as a true freshman. Every single broadcast would beat it into your skull. They made sure that you left that broadcast knowing he was a 17-year-old. Now he's no longer 17, but you hear what I'm saying. If he was doing that as a true freshman in the SEC, if he's snatching souls against Georgia as a freshman in the conference, he has 8 touchdowns. Spoiler alert, you only had 16 passing touchdowns from Jalen Milroe. What could he be with some more consistency at quarterback? What could he be if you were to give him another offseason under his belt? You pair with that, Jeremy Bernard, y'all, is one of the better receivers, I think, in the SEC coming back. He had almost 800 yards receiving, 16 yards per catch. There's some real top-end talent that we didn't get to see, I don't think, operate at a high enough gear a season ago. Now, you pair with that a transfer wide receiver from Miami and Isaiah Horton, who is a bit of a different skill set, bigger body, 6'4". I talked to someone close to Alabama. They think he could be an all-SEC kind of guy, along with the other 2 names I just mentioned. So if you're telling me you have the potential to have, give or take, 2 to 3 SEC all-conference wide receivers, that's not nothing. That tells you the horsepower this offense has, and that also tells you that when you talk about Kalen DeBoer's offense, that really is where this thing gets dangerous. Think back to 2023 Washington and what that outfit was, with Ryan Grubb calling the plays. He's now back in the fold under Kalen DeBoer in Tuscaloosa. The reason why they were so effective, yes, because of Michael Penix Jr., but also because you just had so many mouths to feed. If you were calling a defense, it was very difficult to account for all of those guys throughout the course of a 4-quarter football game. It was like whack-a-mole, man. If you had Jalen Polk, well, then Rome Odunze would get loose. If you give extra attention to McMillan, well, then you would have Polk get loose. Like it was a thing where you didn't have enough defensively to account for all of those talented playmakers. Now, Rome Odunze is a first-round wide receiver. Will Bama have a first-round wide receiver in this room? Remains to be seen. But the point that I'm making stands. There's real-deal top-end talent to, I think, maximize what Kalen DeBoer's system is going to be in 2025. So you say, JD, there's top-end talent. Like, yes, Isaiah Horton transfers in. That's great. But you just told me how good Ryan Williams is. And I agree, he's a good player. As a freshman, I think he'll be great. But Jeremy Bernard, also good season last year. Why didn't they make their presence more felt consistently for us last year? You're telling me how good they are. Why weren't they better? Y'all, if I am a great chef and I can make you one of the best steaks around, but you don't have a grill, guess what we're not having for dinner? Guess what's not on the menu? Yeah, you guessed it. So when we don't have a quarterback to operate the system, we don't have a grill to make the dish. Catch my drift? So that's why you didn't see it, I think, flash as much as you're going to see it flash here in 2025. Now, on top of that, you got the top-end talent. I also think that you look across this room, there's some real depth here. Like, there's some freshmen now that are turning some heads during spring practice. Lazier Brooks, we say this a lot during spring practice, pay attention to frequency around names that are mentioned. If you keep hearing a name coming up when you're dialing into all the intel over at Bama Online, or you're watching the show and we keep mentioning one specific player, that means they're doing something right. The frequency of names being mentioned usually translates to the fall, is what I can gather. Lazia Brooks, yes, he's a true freshman, but draw some Jalen Waddle comps very early on in his career. Going to rock the 1.7. That takes some guts, takes some juice, takes some self-confidence. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that is having 4 or 5 catches a game for you, but just the fact that there's a guy that you can potentially go to as he progresses as a college football player and has a different skill set than maybe some of those guys that I mentioned in that top-end group, that's a very good sign. Again, going back to depth, going back to having more for a defense to account for, Lazia Brooks, a guy that they're pretty excited about. Derek Meadows, also a guy they're excited about. Speaking of different skill sets, I believe he's, if not the tallest in that room, he's definitely one of the tallest in that room. 6'5". Kalen DeBoer praised him for being able to use his body well during a one-on-one drill. It's one thing to be big, especially at that age. It's one thing to have a good frame and all those things, but like I can just tell you, it's one thing to have physical attributes, but to be able to utilize it and to be able to take a 6'5" frame and go win and jump ball, those are two different things. To hear Derek Meadows is already evolving into that, and it has that skill set as a true freshman early enrollee, that's a very, very good sign. So again, let me bring this point home one more time. If you have guys that could eventually be a force for you during the season, in addition to the top-end talent, y'all, you have what you need to run the system. I'd even mention Jalen Mbakwe, who's now pivoted from corner to receiver. He was a 5-star plus cat out of high school. Like that's another guy that can help you. So there's a lot of names here to keep track of. This gives me confidence in the Ryan Grubb offense here in 2025. So the difference here, in addition to the depth, in addition to that top-end talent getting another year into their system, it keeps going back to what we said, for the entirety of this offseason. Alabama now, from Kalen DeBoer's first spring to now, is just more settled. More things are in place. It's more organized. Ryan Williams isn't trying to learn the playbook. Maybe he's trying to get up to speed with Ryan Grubb's playbook, but I have to believe it's probably a pretty similar kind of system to some respects. Kalen DeBoer has his offensive coordinator. Alabama's going to be able to actually use the portal for themselves here a little bit more frequently when we get to the spring. Like all those things, there's more there for Alabama to build upon what they did last year, but it's more settled to where you actually have your feet underneath you, and the wide receiver room, I think, is a massive part of that. So this all comes back to what I said at the top, the quarterback room. You should, keyword should, have a quarterback that is of the skill set to make all this go. Now, whoever that is, I promise you it means more to Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb than it does to either of us watching this show, as crazy as it is to believe how they put food on the table. They're going to have somebody to run the system and get the football to these playmakers. And if they don't, we'll have a different discussion, but I have to believe between all three of those guys, Simpson, Mack, Russell, they're going to have somebody that I think can deliver the mail downfield. And at that point now, this wide receiver room can really shine. So again, we're high on the receiver room, a lot of talent. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel. Get us in the comment section. Looking forward to hearing from y'all. For Cato on the ones and twos, for myself, JD PicKell, we appreciate y'all, love y'all. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.